All right, let's get started. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Thank you all for being here. Today, we'll be covering on how ITOM visibility streamlines IT asset management. And today's session is part of our ITOM visibility and governance webinar series, which we host once per month here on the community. So please feel free to join us for future events. And today's session is also part of the Live on ServiceNow program, which is a program that we have to help connect you guys with our product experts so that you could more easily deploy our products and so that you can gain faster time to value. So please feel free to join us for different topics. Today we're focused on ITOM. We've got topics across every area of the platform, such as HR, CSM, ITSM, of course. Just a quick bit of housekeeping. So everyone's line is muted. So please use the Q&A feature just to ask your questions throughout the session. We have a team of people that are going to answer them. We may choose to also ask your question live and answer it live. So please also feel free to introduce yourself when you do ask a question. We'd love to know who you are, where you're from. We're going to have a few polls today, so we ask that you please take those polls. It'll help us get to know you better and plus where you are in your journey. So this session is being recorded today, and it will be shared on the ServiceNow community forum after the session's over. And it will also be posted out to our ServiceNow YouTube channel. And then after the session ends, you'll be prompted to fill out a short survey. So of course, we always appreciate your feedback there. So I'm Steve Emerson. I am the host for today's session. I'm the Outbound Product Manager for ITOM Visibility and Governance here at ServiceNow. Been here for about 5 years. Prior to joining ServiceNow, I've been in multiple IT roles across a multitude of functions. So I know what it's like to be in most of your shoes. And today we also have several other panelists and presenters. So I'll start with Sree. Sree, if you could do a brief introduction.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Subramaniam, lead the product management for ITOM. Been with ServiceNow for 5 years. Prior to this, I worked with companies like Hewlett-Packard, Walmart. Severin, over to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Severin. Well, I joined the Sree's team about 2.5 years ago. I'm focused on the agent client collector as part of ITOM visibility. Brad?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Bradford Blair. I'm a part of the IT Asset Management Outbound Product Management team, and I, like everyone in the IT Asset Management business unit, we work a lot with our brothers and sisters in IT Operations Management. I'm really happy to be here.
All right, thanks everyone. So I'm going to turn things over to Brad, who's going to kick us off with our first area, which is why automated visibility is critical for IT asset management.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. Confirming that you can see my screen share?
Yes.
Okay, great. We're going to go ahead and jump right into one of those poll questions. So everyone, Steve's going to go ahead and bring that up. And this is our poll question. How do you discover your IT assets today? You can select multiple choices. So let's go ahead and take 20 seconds there to fill that out real quick. I'm watching my clock here. How are you discovering your assets today? All right, that's been about 20 seconds. Why don't we go ahead and close that poll, please? We can take a look at the results. Very excited to see that a lot of you are using ServiceNow Agentless Discovery, and that we're starting to get some adoption for Agent Client Collector. Those are definitely the premier ways to get your discovery information, not only for your IT operations management use cases, but also for your ITAM use cases. Of course, there are situations where a third-party tool may be required, and we do offer that capability as well. And then for those of you that aren't discovering assets yet, you're still in the right place. It's never too late to start doing that, and we're going to discuss that here a little bit more. So I'll go ahead and move on. And I'm traveling remotely today. I apologize, I can't meet you with my video on, but I'm traveling remotely. And the laptop I have right now, the integrated computer isn't working. So I appreciate your grace in that. When we talk about SAM tools that are not run on a CMDB, they'll often miss most, if not all, the current asset activity. So when you have those legacy tools that are dependent on imports and exports into your CMDB, it's putting you in a position where the moment there's a break in that process for import or export, you're going to have a situation where you don't have that current asset activity. And when it comes to asset management, that can be disadvantageous, because for those of you that are aware of how ServiceNow really works to define asset management, we have a focus on the life cycle. So that complete technology asset life cycle, when you're starting at inception all the way through deployment and then to retirement, what we want to do is make sure we have that information primarily from discovery, but also we'll talk about the other data sources as well when it comes to entitlements. So when we think about the value proposition of ServiceNow, and we get into this here a little bit more with this slide, when you have your discovery data on the CMDB, the Now platform, and then you have the ability within the same data model to then have that work hand in hand with the capabilities that come with asset management, you're going to be in a position to have automation across that full technology life cycle. And that's what this presentation is going to be about here a little bit more. Obviously, very shortly, we're going to get more into the discovery parts of this equation, but just giving you a viewpoint as to how that work will benefit your end results when it comes to asset management. In terms of how software asset management works on the Now platform, you're going to get that raw inventory data. Discovery is the premier place to get that from, whether it's agentless or the agent client collector agents. And then you're also going to put your purchase information in there. That's then going to get run through the content service to start normalizing that data so that you're going to get consistent versioning in addition for your various products that are out there. We're then going to run that through our compliance. This is where the publisher packs come into existence. So those are license metrics that are unique to a specific publisher, things like that. And then once we get those compliance positions, you're going to be in a position to start taking action. So whether that's you're looking for cost savings, you're looking for risk mitigation, whatever that may be. And these are some of the outcomes that are going to be driven by that compliance action. And the great thing, again, as we were talking about earlier, that content service feeds into ITOM and some of the other products on the Now platform. So you're going to have full asset lifecycle visibility. These are the publisher packs that I mentioned. And so these are powered with that data from discovery. So when we're getting into some of these more advanced use cases for some of the bigger software vendors, these publisher packs with software asset management have the license metrics and the metric attributes built in, so that when we get that data and you import your entitlements and then you click compliance, it'll begin to calculate those positions for you right then and there. And then as I wrap up here, just a quick plug on how HAM works on the Now platform. So hardware asset management, very similar. There's obviously a bit more of a focus on the discovery data, if you will. So that inventory data that you have out there, again, discovery is a fantastic source for that. And then we're also going to run that through the content service. So a lot of times what will happen is you'll have semantic differences in terms of the product name or the model name. And so our content service goes ahead and normalizes that. So you have consistent naming for your 5 different flavors of a MacBook Pro 15-inch. And then that's going to feed right into these workflows that are based on that life cycle that we were talking about. And so those workflows, again, are going to open up some action-oriented workflows that you can take when it comes to asset spend or things like that. And just like with SAM, that content service feeds into IT operations management. That's everything I wanted to cover for asset management. I'm really looking forward to what Sree and Severin have to talk about here with discovery specifically. that specific part of the use case here. So thanks, Steve, for having me on.
Thank you, Brad. Behind all workflows, we need to have a very powerful data layer. And this is the place where ITOM visibility comes in for a rescue. Because when you look into the data strategy, we have a discovery technology which is agentless, agent-based, that can collect infrastructure, hardware information, software information, dependency data, some of the licensing requirements that we need to solve for you demands different dimensions of data. In today's webinar, you're going to learn some of those dimensions and see how ServiceNow Discovery can help you to collect the data. On the endpoint side, similarly, you need to source the data from multi-source data sets like SCCM, TANIUM, JAMF. We also have agent client collector that can help you to collect the same set of data, and Severin is going to show you how you can tap into the agent-based technology to enrich your data sources. But let's look into the meat of this webinar, the software asset management and hardware asset management that demands some critical data sets, right? When we look into the software asset management, the installed software estate is the foundational data set that is needed for you to create discovery models, normalize, and then attach it to a software model, which then can be used for your reconciliation engine, to provide an effective license positioning. The installed software estate, again, can be collected by three different methods. Package manager method, which is, again, the most easiest way to collect the data. Looking into registry keys, your deployed packages, anything that is visible there is an easy data collection. We have pattern-based approach that can, again, collect some interesting data dimensions. A good example is like if you want to have complicated data collections like Oracle database version edition, SQL database version edition, WebLogic, Tuxedo, your other complex softwares that demands you to detect the installed software data by looking into different dimensions of data sets that's available for patterns. We'll show you a demonstration of how this technique can also help you to collect the data. The third important dimension is file-based discovery. A good example is Log4j. When the shell hits hard, right? Everyone was scrambling around how do we detect the presence of Java, the presence of Log4j, and for software asset management, in particular, Java audits, right, demands you to effectively track, where this software is deployed, because it's an easy for any developer to download and install without understanding the legal requirements to meet the licensing needs. And the three methods that I am showing you, like the package manager method, is widely used. This is, again, very easy to activate. We'll show you the settings that is needed for you to activate this data collection. This will collect the data into installed software table, a table that was specifically created for software asset management use cases. It's a table called CMDB SAM SW install. And once the data collection comes in, then a discovery model gets automatically generated. This will be used by the software asset management normalization layer to normalize this data, and then a software model gets created, which will be used by the SAM reconciliation engine to validate the entitlement checks. The second dimension is the pattern-based approach, which again will give you complex data collection. The third important approach is the file-based discovery. We'll show you a demo on all the three pieces. Before I show the demo on these techniques, a file-based discovery in particular is very interesting technique because once you activate it, you need to give them information like the location of folders that you need to scan, typically program files like /opt. These are all common places where you put software. You can also give extensions to scan, like for example, you want to scan star.exe in all program files. It's a simple configuration to set it up. We can also discover SWID tags, which is again important for IBM software if you want to detect them, because this SWID tags will have the ISO tagging technique, and some of the big players like IBM has adopted it. So we can discover the tags. We can also create installed software data based on the tagging information. Before I show the demo, a quick note on the cloud discovery, because when you look into the estate, majority of your workloads are moving to the modern infrastructure like cloud and containers. So you are going to see how our discovery technology can also help you to collect visibility to the multi-cloud setup by looking into the infrastructure as services, PaaS services. We will be discovering this in an event-driven discovery fashion, but also for software asset management, we collect some very interesting dimensions of data. A good example is bring your own licensing, pay as you go, spot licensing, identifying those physical servers. These are all dimensions of data that is absolutely needed for your software asset management to have these data sets in your CMDB, so that when you perform those complicated calculations, you will be able to comply with some of the regulatory standards or by the licensing terms and agreements defined by the respective vendors. A good example is Oracle database deployed in AWS versus an Oracle OCI. Both have different licensing techniques and metering. If you look into SQL Server deployed with Azure versus AWS, will have different licensing rules, but also the output will be completely different. So the first step is you need to know a SQL Server exists in AWS or Azure. You need to know whether you have opted in for bring your own licensing or pay as you go. So those types are going to really help software asset management drive some of those outcomes. So with that, let's look into a quick demo of some of the capabilities that I just showcased. So from the basics, right? When you install our software asset management, you're going to see a workspace called software asset management workspace. This will give you visibility for your licensing positions. And again, SAM works with two sets of data. Your entitlement data, which you have to import, which you'll have to automate with your procurement, right? So that data will tell you what you have purchased. Then you need data from discovery and visibility, which again is something that we can help you with our technology, like primarily agentless and agent-based, but also with our service graph approach. Some of the major publishers like Oracle, Microsoft, Brad showed you a wide spectrum of publishers. And if you look into those publishers, you'll be surprised by the complexity of licensing metrics used by individual vendors. A good example is Microsoft SQL Server will demand you to have licensing policies based on per processor, per core, or CAL. So all those different dimensions first has to be recorded on saying, hey, what licensing that you have purchased, but based on the licensing metric that is defined by the contractual agreement, as our software asset management module will go and compare and will give you compliance reports. Like here in this case, it's a per core metric. So this means the expectation is firstly, we'll have to detect SQL Server. We'll have to detect the Windows machine where the SQL Server is running. And thirdly, we'll have to collect all the cores that are assigned to the SQL Server so that we can satisfy the data requirements needed for software asset management. So let's give you a quick demo on some of those capabilities. We'll log in. So if I take a SQL Server as an example, let's say I have discovered one that's running in my Azure. So when the discovery runs, it collects a lot of interesting data sets, right? So primarily when discovery itself is, it runs through stages, as you know, like, we'll do an ping sweep using Shazam probes. We will first classify, identify, and once we have discovered those Windows servers, then the patterns gets executed. The pattern will collect information like version and edition. And we've also extended the patterns to collect SQL Server components like your Oracle options. So those are all the complicated data collection, where discovery can help. But along with this, like, when I look into the actual form view of this Windows servers, obviously you might have seen, the core elements that we collect, the overall vCores, that is being provisioned for this data sets, the installed software estate, especially in Windows. The registry key is an excellent data source for us to collect this data. And we find the running process data, anything that matches a process fingerprint. In this case, a SQL server.exe, a fingerprint that belongs to SQL Server. When this process is detected, then behind the scene, a pattern get executed, and the pattern will come and collect all those dimensions of data needed for software asset management, to be served for this data source. And behind the scene, like, you might have activated the entire discovery with a very simple configuration console. So if you have not seen it, the setup itself will take a couple of minutes, where you'll have to have mid server, a server that is will be actually performing some of those scans. Mid server sits in your environment, and IP range will be allocated to the mid or a group of mid server. But once those elements are available, the infrastructure like credential, either integrating with your vault, is all available. So then the configuration console allows you to quickly set up what you want to discover, like quickly set up things like, hey, you want to detect installed software estate or not. And once you have the setup ready, and when the discovery runs, the discovery will collect the installed software estate for you. The other important information that you should be aware of is like the entire data model, where we store all this data. It's called CMDB SW. CMDB SWs. What was that name? So if I open up a Linux server account, if I open up one of those records, so you will see all those software data that gets collected. Maybe I'll open up this Windows server. So we store this data in a table called CMDB SAM SW install, right? So this table I was looking for. And this data model is very important for you to understand, because this is how the entire normalization process is being designed. When discovery goes and collects this raw installed software data, we'll populate the data into this table. Like, let's take a very simple example, like a Java JDK, right? So in this case, the Java 1.8 version of OpenJDK is installed in several places. But behind the scene, you see this reference model called discovery model. So if you remember my slide, right, the first step in the process of normalization is the discovery will collect this raw data, where discovery knows that this specific version of software package is being identified in 76 plus machines. And discovery will populate the discovered publisher, product, and version. But behind the scene, software asset management will try to normalize it with the normalized publisher, product, and version. And on top of it, SAM also adds things like end of life, end of support for the software technology. So this will allow you to plan your lifecycle management, technology, portfolio management, life cycles, where a software like Oracle 11G end of life, then you need to plan in advance, like which application services are going to be impacted based on this end-of-life software. So those are all the key outcomes that we can drive with the discovery and SAM and our APM solution coming together to solve this complex problem statement for you. The next dimension of data that we wanted to show you is the software data that can come from file-based discovery. What is file-based discovery? So primarily, like you might have seen this documentation site, it's a separate plugin that is needed for activating this discovery. And once you activate this plugin, there are some basic configurations that are needed. I will show you what are them. But it's a very powerful technique to go and scan a file system for a file for a SWIT tag. And once we identify that file, this data gets collected into a table called CMDB file information table, where software asset management will have a set of library to identify what this fingerprint is all about. And the fingerprint is defined by the name, version, and other dimensions of data that we collect based on the discovery, like the size. And once the fingerprint is available, like you will also see an install software data getting created within the table, and the discovery sources will be SN file-based discovery. And if your SWID tag-based data set is being generated, you will have a different discovery source called SN SWID tag-based discovery. Otherwise, the discovery source will all be ServiceNow. And anything that is unmatched will go to a table called CMDB unidentified file set table. And in your software asset management, you will have a setup called content services setup. Typically, we encourage our customers to set up this data set for HAM and SAM so that we can go and collect this data anonymously. And the data that comes from this layer will be sent to a centralized repository where a set of librarians will look into the data set that is anomalized, like any discovery models that we have not yet normalized or partially normalized, any discovery models that does not have the lifecycle data sets, like the product lifecycle data. And for SAM, obviously, there is a lot of other non-discoverable elements like part numbers and other things where we can also help you. The processor name normalization is also important, especially because when we wanted to solve some complex calculations for Oracle and SQL Server, IBM, you will see the processor core factor table, which will demand you to map a core factor that is being assigned to the processor type. One of the things that we do discover is, like, if I go to my discovery data, you will see that we are discovering the manufacturer, model information of the processes, and behind the scene, vendors like Oracle or Microsoft will give you a core factor matching for this specific processor, like Xeon. You have to use a core factor of 0.5, which will be used for your software asset management calculation. And hence, it is important to discover these dimensions of data. What CPU processors, what cores, vCores, collect the data sets like the version where the software is installed, and then give these data sets to software asset management to perform complex calculation. And you may also ask questions like, hey, can you discover the same set of data from cloud? And the answer is absolutely yes. In this example, this Windows server is running on an Azure workload. I can also show you another example of an Oracle database deployed into AWS infrastructure. And when you perform your cloud discovery schedule, the first step in cloud discovery is like collecting your cloud assets data using the APIs and service accounts. And once we have the deep dive discovery data, we can collect the same set of data like the vCores, running process, install software data. On top of it, the pattern gets executed so that we can collect Oracle versions, editions, and the entire complex data sets needed to satisfy your requirements. And if you have not activated your cloud discovery, like strongly encourage you to use the cloud operations workspace, which is like, again, super easy to set it up, have your service account in place, AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle Cloud, IBM Cloud. All we need is service principals and service accounts with read-only permissions, so that we can collect the metadata, and then you perform the deep dive discovery data either by deploying an agent or agentless or by service graph. There are multiple ways to collect this data for satisfying your software asset management use cases. When you collect this data, the other important use case for software asset management and ITAM team is the cloud insights. For cloud, we also help in the cloud cost optimization, where we need to collect the tagging data. We have to collect the price information. So the cloud insights module is also part of our software asset management enterprise, which again will use the cloud discovery data to perform some of the software asset management calculations. And before I give the floor to Severin, I want to quickly show you a few other things. One is the file-based discovery. This is again my favorite, especially when you wanted to collect identities based on files. Like here, activated a file-based discovery, quickly performed a scan, identified some of the files, like including log4j and so on. And setting up this file-based discovery is again pretty straightforward. All you need is like go to your configuration console. And it is a separate plugin, not a store application. You need to request this plugin through high support. Once the plugin is installed on your machine, then you can use the configuration console. You can search for configuration console, and you'll see a setup wizard where you will see this activate file-based discovery. And there are some basic information that you have to input, like the folder structures to scan, what folders that you wanted to ignore, any exclusion list or any wildcards, extensions that you wanted to collect, and so on. You can also control your scans by providing effective throttling rates, whether you want to scan the SWID tags or you wanted to use the process path. So it's a very simple setup. Once you set it up, the first time discovery runs, it deploys a script to the target host. The next time, the discovery will collect the data that is coming from the previous scan, so that we don't have to keep discovery as on hostage, right, waiting for file-based discovery to run, because it's going to scan the target file system. Again, my recommendation is please configure the folders to scan in a limited fashion so that the results are effective. You don't want to collect all the files sitting in C:, right? That was just going to create a lot of noise in the CMDB file information table, and it will be useless, right? So target the folders and use the data for complex calculations like Java, and any other technologies that can be detected purely by defining the file fingerprinting technique. So with that, I'm going to hand over the floor to Severin so that you can learn about the agent client collector and how we can help you in the endpoint testing. Severin, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Sree. And well, thank you for my own personal training. Well, you've been working through quite a lot of content here. And well, to everyone in the call, you see that our platform, the platform of platforms, is very configurable. So as you onboard into a new implementation project, adding a new data source or configuring a new integration piece, make sure that you review these kind of configurations. You see what you need so that you configure it for what works best for you. And with that, let me share my screen on the agent. Give me just a few seconds here. There we go. And here we are. Feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. We'll have time to go through these after the presentation. All right. So in our last poll, we've seen a bit of adoption here in the audience on the agent client collector. So For those of you who are not familiar with it, this is a new way to collect information on your target systems, extract that information, send it to ServiceNow for processing, and provide an alternative to horizontal discovery, which may be more suitable for maybe some of your cloud environments, some of your restricted networks in your data centers, and also for endpoints, so end user compute devices. This agent is not just for one specific targeted purpose, but to answer many of the needs you have that you can use on ServiceNow platform. So we can ingest events and metrics with the agent that will feed into our AIOps platform on ServiceNow with ITOM Health. We can interact with the agent from ServiceNow instance for regular ITSM use cases, where we can provide live data from the agent to enrich your tickets for your IT support to better serve your company associates. And also, we integrate with our SecOps SIR product to enrich security incidents using the agent. Of course, with the Agent Client Collector, we collect all of that information that you have normally with regular discovery on the assets information and system information. And I will go to that in a minute. And last piece here, this is about helping you to make smarter decisions on our licensing, on our licensed products for SAM use cases. The Agent Client Collector itself can execute additionally custom playbooks, and we embed an open source solution that is called OS Query that can enable you to extract data much more easily across multiple platforms on Linux, on Windows, on Mac, and integrate them directly with ServiceNow. So with our Agent Client Collector, we enable our customers to collect two types of data sets for SAM, beyond just the install software on your given endpoints. We can collect the last access time of applications on Windows and on Mac. And for now on Windows, we can also collect the total usage time for specific applications. All of this is collected by the agent. And then as you define your software reclamation roles, we will be able to store that information into ServiceNow software usage tables so that you can make your own decisions to uninstall or reallocate licenses for the users that need that. Oh, sorry. So time for the demo. Any questions so far, Steve? As I find a way to...
No, you can proceed. I'm just answering one right now.
All right, thank you. All right. So the Agent Client Collector is available on the store. This is a store app. If you want to evaluate it, you can always do a get here. You select your non-production instances if you don't have licensing yet, and you can evaluate the features from there. As you have your Agent Client Collector installed, you will have access to the core dashboard we have that will help you to take your actions for maintenance, making sure that the agents are working the way you expect on your platforms. I don't see a thing with Zoom here. All right. So on my demo instance, I do have a couple of environments available. I do have some systems on Google Cloud, on physical compute that is actually sitting on my desk, some VMs on AWS, on Azure. I do have a Mac OS over here as well. and regular VMs in data centers. So opening up just a few records here, let's pick the Linux and the Mac. You will find the usual information for physical assets. So the manufacturer information, model ID, of course, to get the asset created, CPU or RAM information, serial numbers, as well as the system information, FQDN, DNS, etc. And just like usual, with a traditional discovery, you will find the serial numbers, storage devices, partitions, file systems, TCP connections, running processes. We also introduced recently the data collection for OS users that can help you to identify those user accounts or shared accounts that maybe should not be there anymore. So we help you for this kind of use cases by collecting that information. And then, as I have ITAM enabled on this instance, all of the installed software is being stored into the sample tables that you can see here, software installations. So this is what you have with just spinning up the agent, basic, out-of-the-box installation. And for endpoints, you can collect usage data for a specific list of applications. Are we good on time? Yeah. All right. So I defined a few reclamation rules, some of them with just last use date, where I select the type of my reclamation, last use date instead of total usage time. I assign a software product that has been normalized. And with that mapping, you can see the kind of processes we're looking after to do that mapping. Once the agent client collector runs, and by the way, it runs with its own policy, right? You will have this SAM discovery for Windows in particular. We will collect that information and store that into the CMDB. And as we collect that data, we'll then store it into software usage. So you can see the destination for this last use date here, show matching, where I was able to collect that information. And as you can see here, very recently, I was able to collect that on, what is that system? That's the system on AWS. On the small Intel NUC on my desk, same thing here, collecting some data and assigned to that specific user. So this is use case one. You just want to get the last use date. You can enable that, and we'll collect that from the system. Now, the second option is to have a much more surgical data collection that will require a bit more of deployment on the target systems, configuring OS query to poll every so often how many processes are running, which ones, for how long they have been using CPU, etc. And by doing that, we can give you quite some insights about how often that application has been used. So for example, here, I installed Visual Studio Code on a couple of systems. Software product that has been normalized, Visual Studio Code, looking for this process normally, code.exe. I guess that's for Mac as well. And from here, well, we have quite a bit of processing that is hidden normally from the customer. But at some point, the data is stored into a staging table that is here. As we collect that information from the systems, we don't want to have too many actions on the destination table and software usage table. So we have some pre-processing that is being done in the staging area. And from that, we do have a scheduled job that runs normally. So often I just forced it manually for the scope of this demonstration. And you end up with your total CPU time that is displayed here. Any question on the chat? Steve?
Not specifically to this, but it's more about discovery in general. Maybe it probably applies to both this and agentless, but how can the CI name be equal to serial number upon discovery?
How can the CI name be equal to the serial number on discovery? So normally the CI name is defined out of the box with a couple of properties that we have. We normally pick up just the host name, but you can configure it to have to include the domain name into it. Actually, on the store app, I believe I put a link because I forget that link always. Here, discovery properties. And you can change the behavior. So for example, you want to use the WMI name, you will be able to enable with WMI instead of a DNS configuration. You want to have a full FQDN, include domain. There you go, you have it. I don't believe out of the box, Sree, correct me if I'm wrong, that we can just pick up the host name, the serial number instead. And one of the problems, watch out, there are multiple types of serial numbers. It's quite a mess, to be honest. On Windows, on Linux, you have a BIOS serial number, you have a baseboard serial number. But if you want to tweak that in the pre-IRE processing scripts for traditional discovery, I believe you can change that behavior to put the CI name as being the serial if you want to have a specific format. And for the agent client collector, we allow customers to change before it goes to the IRE to change the format. That will be custom, so be careful then whenever you update it. What I can tell you is that for the agent client collector, very recently on our August release, I believe, we give you the choice of which serial number to pick up. I was very insisting on that. So if you prefer the baseboard over the BIOS, you can tweak that just with that system property. I talked a lot. Any other question?
Nothing related to agent client collector.
All right. Thank you very much. So
thank you, Severin. Yeah, I see questions on containers, right? Hey, what can we discover within containers? So that's an, I think I missed this narrative. But one of the things discovery can collect is, as you know, like, if you look into the Dockerized versions, right? So obviously, discovery can discover your Linux machines, but also Docker runtime. We can collect information about those runtimes. Along with this, we can collect information about your running containers. So here I have a SQL container that's running on a standalone Docker image. And if you look into this topology, you will see the Linux server, Docker engine, but also the entire Docker image and the running containers that are running within the standalone Docker runtime. And if you look into the image perspective, right, you will have information like know how many places where the specific image is running. You'll have information about the repo and so on. The same is true for things like Kubernetes. When you look into things like the things that we can discover is like Kubernetes services, pods, containers. One of the things that we can effectively collect is not just the infrastructure view, but also we collect the tags based on which we do the tag-based service mapping. But on top of it, like the entire topology of data that can be collected with more event-driven discovery fashion, like you'll have visibility to the clusters, know where the service is being hosted, know the pods and runtime. But the most important thing is like running containers, but also the Docker image from which those containers are provisioned. And we'll have information like how many containers are running for the specific image ID, which is again important for the software asset management tracking. The last piece of the demo that I've been asked to run is on a deep dive into the Oracle license certified mechanism. As you all know, like ServiceNow is being certified or validated or verified by the Oracle GLAS services, and the primary use case is to give you that compliance position for Oracle. So with that, like maybe we can start with the poll, and then I'll do a deep dive into the narrative. Steve, please release a poll.
Sree, let's just proceed. I don't see that poll question here in Zoom.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So the Oracle license services, the LMS, or is the previous term, license management services. So they go and partner with a lot of tool providers to go and verify and validate whether the data collection coming from the engine can be fully be used for your licensing audit. Because a typical like a license audit or a license verification will take at least 8 to 10 weeks, where you'll have to deploy the LMS scripts on the target host. You'll have to collect the data manually. You'll have to consolidate, and you'll have to hire a third-party auditor. So it's your responsibility to be prepared to make sure that you are in compliant with the the audit regulatory standards defined by the respective vendors. And in case of LMS, the good news is like, yes, we do have an out-of-the-box solution that can help you to proactively collect this data. So if I can share my screen. And the first thing that you should be aware of is the Oracle page that defines like where ServiceNow is verified and validated to collect this data, mainly for the Oracle database and Oracle Fusion middleware services. The first step is like you'll have to download this app called Data Collection for Oracle GLAS. And once you download this content, it will like import certain patterns into your pattern library. So you'll see this scoped application called Data Collection for Oracle GLAS, and it will have some extended data collection. You still need to have an user ID and a password. That means an application level user ID and password. So you'll have to go to your credential table, add an Oracle user ID and password that will have select access to some of the tables for which like the data collection will happen. And if you look into the actual data sets, so let's go back to my instance. And if you search for Oracle, you will see a bunch of data here in this scoped application. So firstly, a dashboard that gives you how many Oracle instances are there, how many middleware components have been discovered, like your Fusion software, Tuxedo, and other software which can be easily detected with configuration files. We're going to give you a breakdown on versions and so on. But the most important thing for the audit is like these 6 different tables, like the detail table, options table, overview table, and these are all super important for to meet your audit requirements. For example, Oracle options, right? And here the script that is provided by the auditing team, right? And again, we are just using the exact same script that will be executed by the auditors. Like we'll collect the data for you and we'll store all this data into a single unified table. Similarly, Oracle DBA users, right, which will uniquely identify the list of all users, where like you can even like see exactly what data is being collected. we recommend not to touch or modify any of those automated data collection, because this will again go into the tampering view of the data. But once the data is being collected, the only thing that you have to do is, especially when you have been asked to provide this data, is a simple dashboard where you'll have to go and say that, hey, you wanted to share this data for Oracle database or middleware, download it, download the vCenter information and VM information. Just 3 simple steps that can know where the data can be handed out to your auditors. With that, right, I'm going to hand over the floor to Steve to have his final thoughts.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sree. I appreciate that. And we do have the last poll added into Zoom, so let's launch that really quickly before we wrap up the session. While we're doing that, I'll just share my screen. So we just like to know, what is your experience with how long it takes for you to provide Oracle with the verified installation and usage data if you have a request from them for an audit. Now, what Sree just showed is the ability for us to collect the Oracle data and to provide to Oracle for an audit, right? It's always good to understand your license position, and that's where SAM Pro comes in. So what Brad talked about earlier in the session, that's where SAM Pro would help you understand, well, what is my position, right? I've inputted my entitlements, and I've done all my discovery to see what I'm using. So we can go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So the biggest answer here is I don't know, right? But that may be because most of you aren't involved in this process. But weeks seems to be the prevalent answer here. And as Sree mentioned, it's about 6 to 8 weeks on average. So let's go ahead and just wrap up with a few last slides here. So we do have some time for questions. Do we have any questions in here that we need to get to? Let's see. I don't see any open questions. Certainly, if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A right now. We have a team of experts that can answer them. But I'm gonna go ahead and just wrap up here. So we do have some resources available for you, which we will put into the we will put these into the chat, but also we're going to put this deck up on the community page as well. So have no fear, you will get access to these resources. One of the things that we do here at ServiceNow is we create our roadmaps based upon a lot of customer input, right? So it's driven by the needs of the customer, you guys. So we have an idea portal, which has recently moved from our community over to our Now support page. So please make sure that you go to the right place now. This is where you can submit an idea, and our product management team will look at it, and possibly your idea. If it receives enough upvotes, we will consider it for the roadmap. It's not guaranteed, but we will consider it. We do have some final areas here as far as what we'd like you to take away. One being, we'd like you to, rethink your hardware and software discovery approach based on what you learned today. Are you doing it correctly? We want you to begin trying out some of these products in sub-production, right? Get your stakeholders excited about it based upon what you've done. Of course, we are here to help. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your ServiceNow account teams or drop a comment on the community page. And then finally, we'd love to hear your success stories. So please share them with us. As you start to realize value from these solutions, please, just let us know. And we do have our next webinar coming up on November 29th, which is where we're going to cover our new capability around automated service suggestions and how you can speed up time to value for service mapping. So please join us. So with that said, just a quick recap on how ITOM visibility can help you achieve service operations excellence overall. And I wanted to thank you all for attending today. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you again in November. Thank you all.